Welcome to another presentation by the Light of Zion. It's my pleasure to present to you again and to welcome you to this channel. Our website is https://www.thelightofzion, and we invite you to visit this channel and check it out. You will find some amazing information that will help you in working with your God as we await our leader and our king from heaven at the appointed time to restore Israel. So today I'm coming to you with another interesting discussion, and this one is titled, How We Israel Will Serve Our God. How the chosen ones of Israel will serve our God. So follow along as we go through these lessons. This will be a two-part presentation because I think the slides are too long, but I'm going to cut it, make it into a two-part presentation. But we'll be discussing how the chosen ones of Israel will serve Yahuwah our God. There is an error at the beginning of the nation of Israel. When Yahuwah chose our ancestors and took them out of Egypt, slavery bondage in Egypt, He established them with intention that they will serve His will. But Yahuwah knew, because Yahuwah can tell the future from the beginning, that Israel will not cooperate, that Israel is a stubborn people. And He told in advance the things that will happen to Israel before they will return to serve Yahuwah, the God of Israel. Yes, our ancestors of Israel rejected and abandoned Yahuwah and followed and served the gods of the other nations around them. Yes, like He foretold, Yahuwah said that they will leave Him and He's going to bring calamity upon them, upon Israel. So Israel's ancestors rejected Yahuwah and went to serve the gods of the other nations. In the book of Judges, chapter 2, verse 6 to 14, there it is written, When Joshua sent the people away, each of the Israelites went to his inheritance to take possession of the land. The people continued to serve Yahuwah all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who outlived Joshua and who had seen all of Yahuwah's great deeds in behalf of Israel. Then Joshua the son of Nun, the servant of Yahuwah, died at the age of 110. So they buried him in the territory of his inheritance in Timnath-Heres, in the mountainous region of Ephraim, north of Mount Gaas. All that generation were gathered to their ancestors, and another generation arose after them that did not know Yahuwah or what he had done for Israel. So the Israelites did what was bad in the eyes of Yahuwah and served the Baals. Thus they abandoned Yahuwah, the God of their forefathers, who brought them out of the land of Egypt. And they followed other gods, the gods of the peoples, who were all around them. And they bowed down to them and offended Yahuwah. They abandoned Yahuwah and served Baal and the Ashtoreth images. At this, Yahuwah's anger blazed against Israel, so he handed them over to the plunderers, who pillaged them. He sold them into the hands of the enemies around them, and they were no longer able to hold their own against their enemies. So this was an error at the beginning of Israel, after Israel settled in the promised land. The generation of Joshua and the elders that knew Yahuwah passed away, but another generation arose that did not know anything of what Yahuwah has done for Israel. And they left Yahuwah and they went to serve and bow down to the other gods of the nations around them. And that caused Yahuwah's anger to blaze. So this error at the beginning of Israel caused Israel not to serve Yahuwah as he intended. So our ancestors of Israel rejected Yahuwah as king over us, and they chose rather a human king to lead us to be like the other nations. Yes, with time, our ancestors, they rejected Yahuwah as king, and they chose to have a human king. In the book of Samuel, chapter 8, verse 4 to 8, there it is written, In time all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, Look, you have grown old, but your sons are not walking in your ways. Now appoint for us a king to judge us like all the other nations. But it displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. Then Samuel prayed to Yahuwah, and Yahuwah said to Samuel, Listen to everything the people say to you, for it is not you whom they have rejected, but it is I whom they have rejected as their king. They are doing just as they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day. So they keep forsaking me and serving the other gods, and that is what they are doing to you. So in the days of Samuel, our ancestors rejected Yahuwah from being king over us. They want to have a human king to be like the other nations, to conform to the other nations. They asked Samuel to give them a king. So Yahuwah told Samuel to give them what they want, because it is not him that they have rejected, but they have rejected Yahuwah himself from being king over us. So this was the error at the beginning of the nation of Israel. Israel therefore have not really served Yahuwah, but they keep rejecting, they keep leaving Yahuwah to go and serve other gods. But in this discussion, our main focus is how will Israel serve Yahuwah, the God of Israel. So the error at the beginning of Israel and the punishment. So because of this error at the beginning of Israel, Yahuwah recommended punishment for the people of Israel. In the book of Deuteronomy chapter 32 verse 19, there is written, when Yahuwah saw it, what Israel have done, said he rejected them because his sons and his daughters offended him. Yes, Yahuwah rejected Israel. So Yahuwah rejected Israel because his sons and daughters rejected and offended him. In the book of Psalms, chapter 78, verse 58 and 59, there is written, they kept offending him with their high places, and they incited him to fury with their carved images. God heard and became furious, so he utterly rejected Israel. He recommended the foretold punishment for all Israel. So yes, Yahuwah, the Israel kept offending Yahuwah with the false gods that they are running after to go and worship, the gods of the nations around them, the Baal images, Ashtoreth images, all these false gods Israel keep following and keep going to worship. So they incited Yahuwah to fury with these carved images. So Yahuwah recommended the foretold punishment that he has told our forefathers that he's going to bring when Israel rejects him and leave him to go and worship other gods. So in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 64 to 65, there is written, Yahuwah will scatter you among all the nations, from the one end of the earth to the other ends of the earth. And there you will have to serve gods of wood and of stone, which you and your forefathers have not known. You will have no peace among these nations, nor a place of rest for the sole of your foot. Rather, Yahuwah will give you there an anxious heart and failing eyes and a feeling of despair. So the punishment for this error at the beginning of Israel is that Yahuwah will do what? Scatter Israel among the nations. And there we are going to go and serve the false gods of the nations. The gods made of wood and gods made of stone. Gods that our forefathers have not known. The ones that he brought out of Egypt. So we are going to go and serve the gods of the other nations, false gods of the other nations. That is the punishment because of the error of Israel at the beginning of the nation of Israel. So in the book of Hosea chapter 5 verse 15, Yahuwah declared and said, I will go away and return to my place until they bear the consequences of their guilt. And then they will seek my favor. When they are in distress, they will seek me. Yes, so Yahuwah said he will leave Israel alone and go away until Israel complete or serve punishment for our error at the beginning that we have made, which is abandoning Yahuwah to go and seek the gods of other nations and to serve the gods of other nations. In the book of Amos chapter 2 verse 6, there it is written, this is what Yahuwah says, for 3 revolts of Israel and for 4, I will not reserve it. I will not reverse it, because they sell the righteous for silver and the poor for a pair of sandals. At the book of Amos chapter 2 verse 4 it is written, this is what Yahuwah says, for 3 revolts of Judah and for the 4, I will not reverse it, because they rejected the law of Yahuwah and because they did not keep his regulations, but the same lies their forefathers followed have led them astray. So Yahuwah said, for the first count, second count, the third count, by the 4th strike, that he will not reserve bringing the whole punishment upon the people of Israel, both for Judah and both for Israel. So by the 4th strike, or the 4th revolt of their revolting against Yahuwah, he said he will bring all the punishment, unleash all the punishment foretold upon the people of Israel. So with each revolt, Yahuwah brought an enemy nation to punish Israel, and in order to correct our thinking in the decision that we have made, our ancestors have made. With each revolt, Yahuwah brought an enemy nation to come against Israel. However, by the 4th revolt is when he said that he will unleash the full punishment on all Israel. So by the 1st revolt, Yahuwah brought the Assyrians. The Assyrians took Israel, the northern kingdom, away and scattered them among the nations as slaves. By the 2nd revolt, Yahuwah brought in the Babylonians to punish Israel for 70 years. Israel was in captivity in Babylon because of our era of 2nd revolt. By the 3rd revolt, Yahuwah brought the Grecians, Alexander the Great, and they took Israel away from the promised land and scattered Israel as slaves. And by the 4th revolt is when the Messiah was born. And Yahuwah did what? Brought the Romans, and they destroyed the land and scattered Israel away from the promised land and scattered Israelites as slaves. So Yahuwah said by the 4th revolt he will unleash all the punishment upon the people of Israel. And he gave us a sign. He said when the Messiah, the chief cornerstone, is put to death, is when all this punishment will be unleashed to the full upon the people of Israel that he brought out of Egypt, that he is dealing with. So the punishment, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Grecians, the Romans, and the daughters of Babylon, that is the Anglo-American civilization, all of them enslaved Israel and made Israel to serve them and their gods. Yes, Israel served the nations by building up the nations as a slave labor. Yes, they served as the workforce for these nations. And that slavery has continued to follow the people, the chosen race, till today, until the punishment ends. So that is the punishment imposed upon the people of Israel. And the picture of depictions tells you who is the one with the iron neck upon their neck, the iron chain upon their neck, the one being humiliated among the nations, the one serving the nations as in a slave capacity. That is the punishment that Yahuwah imposed upon his people that he is dealing with, that he brought out of the land of Egypt. And that is because of the error of Israel at the beginning of us as a nation, because we refused or we rejected to serve Yahuwah our God, but followed the gods of the other nations. In the book of Psalms chapter 69 verse 22, there it is written, so let their table become a trap for them, and their prosperity a snare. So let their eyes become darkened so that they cannot see, and make their hips tremble constantly. So pour out upon them your indignation, and may your burning anger overtake them. So the psalmist, Yahuwah, is saying that Yahuwah should pour out his what? Indignation upon his people. And that is because they rejected Yahuwah to serve Yahuwah their God, but choose to serve the gods of the other nations. So Yahuwah will pour out his indignation upon the people that he is dealing with, his chosen people. In the book of Romans chapter 11 verse 10 is written, so let their eyes become darkened so that they cannot see, and always make them bend their back. So the people of Israel became blind as to who they really are, the chosen people of God, because of their rejecting their God. He said, let their eyes become darkened. Let them go without understanding, not knowing what is happening to them, and make them bend their back. That is, they should serve as slaves, because they rejected Yahuwah, their God. So this punishment will follow Israel, and they will not understand what is happening. They will not know why they are being oppressed. They will not understand why they are being humiliated, because they rejected Yahuwah their God to go and serve the gods of the nations. So make them bend their back for punishment, for whipping. That is the punishment for rejecting Yahuwah, the God of Israel, the God that did everything for you. So for failing to serve Yahuwah, Israel will continue to serve as slaves to the nations, and still will not understand why until the imposed punishment time ends. Yes, they will not understand why until this imposed punishment ends. For Yahuwah in one place said that he will use up all his arrow on his people. He will punish them until he is satisfied, until he has had enough. And they will not know why. It's because their ancestors rejected to serve Yahuwah, but choose to serve rather the gods of the other nations. So that is the punishment. But the question is this: did Israel fail and fall completely to serve Yahuwah? Did Israel fail and fall completely to serve Yahuwah? Well, in the book of Romans chapter 11 verse 11 and to 12, there is written, "So I ask, they did not stumble and fall completely, did they? Certainly not, but by their first step, there is salvation to the people of the nations, to incite them to jealousy. Now, if their first step means riches to the world, and their decrease means riches to the people of the nations, say how much more will their full number mean?" So Paul is saying that yes, Israel did not fail completely to serve Yahuwah their God, but rather what happened is that Yahuwah did what? The recommended punishment for the people of Israel. So they were decreased. They were to be punished. Yahuwah, it said, in their punishment, in their humiliation, the nations was raised up. The peoples of the nations became rich on their back, using them as slaves. So by their misstep, first steps, their first step means riches to the world. So that means their mistake resulted in free labor for the peoples of the nations. They used Israel to build up their nations. So their decrease means riches to the peoples of the nations. But then he asked the question, how much more when Israel returns in their full number to serve their God? So if Israel's humiliation and punishment resulted in favor and riches for the nations, imagine the blessings that will result when Israel repent and finish their punishment and return to serve Yahuwah their God. There will be more blessings for the peoples of the nations. Because right now Israel is in punishment and still there are blessings to the nations. They are building up the nations, making the nations rich. What will happen when Israel returns, in repentance to serve their God? So the humiliation of Israel resulted in the riches for the peoples of the nations. And Paul said that Yahuwah did this in order to incite Israel to jealousy. Yes, in order to incite us to jealousy so that we can seek to return to our God and serve Him. See how the nations are blessed and they have built up riches for themselves. While we are being humiliated among the nations, that will incite us to jealousy to do what? To seek to return to serve our God. So the true blessings will come through Israel. True blessings will come through Israel. In the book of Genesis, chapter 22, verse 17 to 18, there is written and foretold, I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply you, your offspring, like the stars of the heavens, and like the grains of the sand of the seashore, on the seashore. And your offspring will take possession of the gates of his enemies. And by means of your offspring, all nations of the earth will obtain a blessing for themselves, because you have listened to my voice. So the promise to Abraham is that through his offspring, that Yahuwah will multiply his offspring like the stars of the heavens and like the grain of the sand of the sea. But he said that by means of your offspring, all the nations of the earth will obtain a blessing for themselves because you have listened to my voice. In the book of Galatians chapter 3 verse 16, there is written, now the promises we have spoken to Abraham and to his offspring. It does not say, and to your descendants, in the sense of many. Rather it says, and to your offspring, in the sense of one, who is Yahushua, or the Christ. So the promise was made to one that is that the offspring of Abraham, one offspring of Abraham. By means of this offspring, God will bring blessings to all the families of the earth. He didn't say by means of all offspring of Abraham, but by means of one offspring. Yes, Abraham has many offspring. Ishmael, Isaac. Later we have Esau and Jacob. But the chosen offspring is the one by which these blessings will come. And we know that Isaac was chosen and not Ishmael. We know that Jacob was chosen and not Esau. And Jacob gave birth to the 12 tribes. And the 12 tribes gave birth to Judah. And from Judah came the Messiah. So by the chosen offspring, which is Israel, Jacob, all the families of the earth will be blessed. But Jacob is in punishment among the nations. Jacob is being humiliated. Jacob rejected Yahuwah their God. So Yahuwah recommended punishment for the chosen offspring until they complete their punishment. So Paul was saying, if the humiliation of Israel resulted in blessings to the nations, how much more when they return back to serve Yahuwah their God? How much more blessing would they bring to the families of the earth? For by them the whole nations, the families of the earth will be blessed. Yes, for the blessings will come through the offspring of the chosen offspring of Abraham, and that is Israel or Jacob. In the book of, yes, Israel or Jacob will serve Yahuwah in the promised land. In the book of Ezekiel chapter 20 verse 39 and 40, this is what Yahuwah said concerning his people of Israel. It's written, as for you, O house of Israel, this is what the sovereign Lord Yahuwah has said. Yahuwah says, each of you go and serve his disgusting idols. But afterwards, if you do not listen to me, you will no longer be able to profane my holy name by your sacrifices and your disgusting idols. For in my holy mountain, on a high mountain of Israel, declares Yahuwah, the sovereign Lord Yahuwah, is where all the whole house of Israel, all of them, will serve me in the land. And I will take pleasure in them there, and I will require your contributions and the first fruits of your offspring, all your holy things. So through the prophet Ezekiel, Yahuwah revealed. Yes, he told Israel, you go and serve your disgusting things, your idols, that is the gods of the nations. You go, I'll put it in punishment, you go and serve the disgusting things, your idols of the nations. But after all, you are going to return here and serve me. He said, after you are going to return here and serve me and listen to me. He said, you will no longer profane my holy name by your sacrifices and disgusting idols. For all Israel will return and serve Yahuwah in his holy mountain. That is where the whole house of Israel, all of them will serve Yahuwah in the land. So Israel, we are still going to serve Yahuwah our God. For we are going to leave the gods of the nations alone and return to serve Yahuwah our God after our punishment is over. Yes, after our punishment is over, the chosen ones of Israel will return to the promised land to serve Yahuwah our God. So, yes, Israel will serve Yahuwah. In the book of Deuteronomy chapter 30 verse 1 to 10, there it is written, so when all these words come upon you, the blessing and the curse that I have put before you, and you call them to mind in all the nations where Yahuwah your God dispersed you, and you return to Yahuwah your God and listen to his voice according to all that I am commanding you today. So you and your sons, and with all your heart and all your soul, say Yahuwah your God will then bring you back, will then bring back your captives and show you mercy and regather you from all the peoples where Yahuwah your God has scattered you. Say even if your people are dispersed to the extremities of the heavens, say from there Yahuwah your God will gather you and bring you back. Yahuwah your God will bring you into the land your fathers took possession of, and you will possess it, and he will make you prosper and will multiply you more than your fathers. Say Yahuwah your God will cleanse you, Yahuwah your God will cleanse your heart and the heart of your offspring, so that you will love Yahuwah your God with all your heart and all your soul, and you may live. So then Yahuwah your God will bring all these curses upon your enemies who hated you and persecuted you. So you will then return and listen to the voice of Yahuwah and observe his commandment, all his commandments that I am commanding you today. So Yahuwah your God will make you abundantly prosperous in all the works of your hand, multiplying your children, and your livestock and the produce of your ground. For Yahuwah will again delight to make you prosper, just as he delighted in your forefathers. For then you will listen to the voice of Yahuwah, Yahuwah your God, and keep his commandments and statutes written in this book of the law. And you will return to Yahuwah your God with all your heart and all your soul. So yes, Israel will still serve Yahuwah in the promised land. Even though there was an error at the beginning of Israel, our ancestors rejected our God, And Yahuwah brought his anger upon us by scattering Israel among the nations until we complete the punishment for our error. But after our punishment ends, Israel, the chosen ones, will return to the promised land to serve Yahuwah. For Yahuwah said, when we recall all these things that he has spoken to us about the blessings and about the punishment that he put upon us, he said, when we recall them to mind and we return to seek for him, he said, he will gather us back from all the corners where he has scattered us, from all the people that where he despised us, that he will gather us back to the land where we are to serve him. So Israel will still serve Yahuwah, our God, just as he's intended. Yes, just as he intended. This is a point where we are going to take a break for this first half of this presentation. But when we come back, we are going to look more into how Israel will serve Yahuwah after he gathers us back to the promised land, after our punishment ends. For our punishment will soon come to an end. And Yahuwah will gather back his people, his chosen ones of Israel, who will return back to the promised land to serve our God as he intended. So join me for the second part of this presentation after our 15 minutes break or so.